Hey there, everyone. It's Dr. Sarah, and today I want to talk to you about mental flossing. Okay, maybe not mental flossing per se. Maybe it's more like managing your mindset. But doesn't mental flossing sound so much more fun? So actually, that's going to be the series for this month. We're going to talk about really doing some mental flossing and what you can do in order to make sure that you're thinking correctly. So let's start out with this first one. And I think the first one is so important for all the rest of them. And that is to examine how you think and what you think about. We all have habits. We have body habits and we have mental habits. For example, you could drive home from work and get home and not even remember how you got there. That's because a habit took over. Well, the same thing can happen mentally. We can think something and eventually it becomes a habit and we never change the way we think. A good example is when I was young in my career. I always felt like I wasn't good enough yet. I had to learn more. I had to do more. And at the time, that was a really good motivator for me to become an expert in my area. However, once I became an expert, I still thought I wasn't good enough. And that thought persisted for a really long time. The problem is we don't even catch how we think in order to correct it. I didn't realize that I still had a problem with not being good enough until I was in one of my coaching classes. And my coach gave me a book to read and said, "Sarah, read this." And I read it and I thought, wow, this will really help my clients. And then a couple weeks later, I met with her again because you had to meet with your coach as you were coaching other people. So I met with her again and she gave me a different book to read. And I read it and I thought, man, this will really help my clients. And the third time she gave me a book, I was about halfway through it when I realized those books were not for my clients. She was trying to help me see that I still had a mental habit of thinking I wasn't good enough, even though I was now a professional who was really pretty daggone good at what I was doing. And when I realized that I was self-sabotaging with the habit that used to help me, but now was harming me and harming how I put myself out in the world, I had to figure out how to change that. Well, the way I changed it was first, I had to be able to catch myself thinking that. And it is not easy to catch something that's kind of like on a subconscious level that you just kind of say to yourself and you don't really pay attention to it. What I had to do was I created a mantra. And I put this mantra everywhere. I have sticky notes on my mirror, in my car, and every time I saw one of my sticky notes, I read it out loud to myself. And my mantra was pretty simple. It just said, I'm a professional. I know what I'm talking about. I've paid my dues. I am good enough. So I said those 4 sentences probably 5 or 6 times a day for months. And you know what eventually happened? In my head, when I was starting to tell myself I wasn't good enough, I was able to have this competing words that helped me catch the fact that I was telling myself I wasn't good enough. So then I went from not being able to hear myself when I was telling myself I wasn't good enough to being able to say, oh, I'm telling myself something that's not correct anymore. When I did that, I would then pause and I would say, you know what? That might have been true at one time, but that's no longer the truth. And I would repeat my new mantra until eventually I stopped having those feelings of not good enough. Or I stopped having them as often. And less often and less often until I rarely have thoughts that I'm not good enough. Unless I'm truly not good enough at doing something. And there are still plenty of things that I am not an expert at. But I stopped allowing that thought to come into things that I know I'm an expert at. So I'd encourage each of you to create your own mantra to help you change negative thoughts or thoughts that are no longer serving you. And then there's also 3 questions that I think you can ask yourself to really start to explore when you're having these thoughts. And the first question is, what else could this be? What else could this be? Could it be something different than is this really true? Is this really true? Is this still true for me? Because a lot of times we have habits of thoughts that served us at one time because we were trying to get better, which is a good thing. Like thinking that you're not good enough because you need to get better at something is amazing and you need to have that. But when you reach a point where you're really good at what you do, thinking you're not good enough actually starts to harm your credibility. Then the last question is or kind of a question / statement is, would I say this out loud to a person I love? A lot of times the mental talks that we give ourselves are negative, are harmful, and in a million years we would not say that out loud to a person we love, but we would say it internally to ourselves. So the challenge for you this week is start to pay attention to what you're telling yourself. Underneath of all of our busy work and the things that we have going on, pause and listen to what you say when you're thinking, hey, I can't do this because, or man, I'd really like to do this, but whatever those are that are holding you back, you need to pay attention and see and make a choice. Does this serve me? And does it serve me well, or is it holding me back? All right, you guys, I'll talk to you next week.